The desert had its own silence. Not the quiet of peace, but the heavy, coiled kind, the silence before a door is kicked in or a round cracks past your ear. Private First Class Elena Torres lay belly down on a patch of scorched Afghan earth, sweat cutting tiny rivers through the dust on her face. Her cheek was pressed hard into the stock of a Barrett M82.50 caliber sniper rifle, a weapon that weighed nearly 30 pounds unloaded. The desert heat shimmered over the rifle's long barrel, turning it into a mirage. She slowed her breathing. In through the nose, out through the mouth. Her spotter whispered, "Wind steady at 4 knots east to west. Rangefinder says 3247 meters. You sure about this?" Elena's lips were dry and cracked, but she didn't smile. "Nobody's sure about this," she said. Because a shot at that range, over 2 miles, wasn't just difficult. It was nearly impossible. But on the ridge across the valley, her target was moving. A Taliban commander who had orchestrated half a dozen IED ambushes along Highway 611. The man was leaving his hide site, flanked by fighters. A Black Hawk was inbound with a squad of Rangers. If he slipped away now, he'd vanish into the maze of mountains again. She checked the scope again. The commander's turban flashed white in the sun as he gestured to his men. She adjusted one last time for wind drift and Coriolis effect. At this range, even the spin of the earth had to be considered. Her finger found the trigger. "Send it," whispered her spotter. Elena squeezed. The Barrett roared like thunder, kicking back into her shoulder with a force that rattled her teeth. The round tore across the valley, invisible, the sound lagging behind the speed of death itself. 5 seconds. That's how long the bullet needed to travel 3,247 meters. 5 seconds that felt like an eternity. Then in the dancing heat mirage she saw it. The target's head snapped back. The commander collapsed like a puppet with its strings cut. His guards scrambled in confusion. Her spotter's eyes went wide. "No way." Elena didn't cheer. She didn't high-five. She just lowered her head, heart pounding, and whispered, "Target down." Back at FOB Timberwolf, the mood was different. The base was a sprawling mess of HESCO barriers, dust-caked Humvees, and half-working generators that hummed through the night. The heat never left even after the sun dropped. When Elena and her spotter reported in, she expected a pat on the back, maybe a mention in the after-action review. What she didn't expect was the arrival of the SEAL chief. Chief Petty Officer Marcus Kane was a broad-shouldered man with a jaw like it had been carved from stone and eyes that looked like they'd seen every corner of hell. He strode into the TOC, Tactical Operations Center, like he owned the place, ignoring the stares from the army grunts. "Which one of you made the shot?" Kane asked, voice like gravel. Everyone turned to Elena. She stood straighter, brushing dust off her uniform. "I did, Chief." Kane studied her, unblinking. 3247 meters. "Confirm?" "Yes, Chief." He leaned closer, searching her face for any trace of arrogance or bravado. He found none. She wasn't smiling. She wasn't bragging. Just tired eyes and a steady voice. Finally he said, "That's not a shot. That's a damn miracle." One of the Rangers chuckled. "Guess miracles happen when you give a Latina from Texas a Barrett and a reason." Even Kane cracked half a grin. But then his expression hardened again. "Private Torres, from now on you're attached to my unit for this deployment. We're going hunting." The mission brief. Later that night, under the canvas roof of a briefing tent, Elena sat with Kane's SEAL team. 6 men with more tattoos than bare skin, faces marked with old scars, and the calm confidence of predators. She was the outsider, the army girl with one legendary shot. On the screen a grainy drone feed played. A convoy of trucks snaked through a mountain pass. "This," Kane said, pointing with a laser, "is the HVT's replacement. Code name, Falcon. He's smarter, meaner, and has friends in Pakistan. Intel says he's moving weapons-grade explosives into Helmand province. If he makes it across, our boys start eating IEDs like candy again." The team nodded. Elena leaned forward. "What's the play?" Kane glanced at her. "The play is we cut the head off the snake before it gets comfortable. We'll insert by hello, trek to an overwatch position, and you," he jabbed a finger toward her, "will do what you apparently do better than anyone else in the theater." Elena felt the weight of every stare. She wasn't one of them, not really. Not yet. But the mission didn't care about feelings. "Copy that," she said. Insertion. 2 nights later, the helicopter blades thundered overhead as the MH-47 Chinook dropped them in the middle of nowhere. Dust whipped into Elena's eyes, stinging. She clutched her rifle like a lifeline as the SEALs moved in silence, every motion precise. They trekked under moonlight, boots crunching on shale, night vision goggles painting the world green. The mountains loomed like jagged teeth. Elena's legs burned, but she refused to lag. Every time she faltered, she remembered Kane's voice. "We're going hunting." By dawn they reached the overwatch. Elena set up her Barrett, the bipod sinking into the dirt. Through her scope, she could see the pass where Falcon's convoy would roll through. The distance? 2,800 meters. Still brutal, but compared to her last shot, it felt almost generous. Kane crouched beside her. "You got this." Elena didn't look away from the scope. "I'll get him." Contact. Hours crawled by. The sun climbed scorching. Sweat soaked her uniform. Her stomach growled. The SEALs stayed disciplined, whispered jokes, sips from hydration packs scanning sectors. Then the convoy appeared. Trucks with mounted guns, men cradling AKs in the beds, dust plumes trailing behind them. And in the middle vehicle, a black Toyota Hilux, sat Falcon. Her crosshairs settled on him. She slowed her breathing. "Wait for my call," Kane whispered. The convoy halted in the pass. Falcon stepped out, flanked by guards. He was younger than she expected. Arrogant. Laughing about something. "Now," Kane ordered. Elena squeezed the trigger. The Barrett thundered. The shot screamed across the mountains. Falcon's head snapped back. Perfect hit. "Target down," she said, voice steady. But the fight wasn't over. The convoy erupted into chaos. Fighters scrambled, shouting, spraying gunfire wildly into the cliffs. "Compromise," one SEAL shouted. "They're scanning for us." Mortars thumped. Dirt erupted around their position. The SEALs cursed and opened fire with suppressed rifles. Kane grabbed Elena's arm. "Pack it, Torres. We're moving." She folded the Barrett, slinging it over her back. Bullets cracked overhead as they bounded downhill, slipping on rocks, adrenaline surging. An RPG whooshed, exploding against the ridge where they'd just been. Shrapnel whined past Elena's face. She stumbled, almost fell, but Kane yanked her upright. "On your feet, soldier." They dove into a dry riverbed as gunfire ripped above them. Kane slammed his radio. "Viper 2-1, we're hot. Need immediate exfil at grid 2499er. The reply was static. The Taliban were jamming comms. "Shit," muttered one SEAL. They were on their own. The decision. Hours later, after fighting through gullies and dodging patrols, the team huddled in a cave. They were low on water, ammo dwindling. Elena's shoulders ached from the Barrett. Kane studied the map by red light. "We've got two options. Cut east through the canyon, shorter, but Falcon's men will be thick in there. Or push north over the ridge, longer but less chance of contact." The SEALs argued in low voices. East was faster but suicidal. North was safer but risked missing the exfil window. Finally, Kane turned to Elena. "You made the shot. You got us into this. What's your call?" Elena blinked. She was the youngest here, the outsider. But Kane wasn't asking out of mockery. He meant it. She thought about the team, about how they dragged her when she stumbled, covered her when she fired, trusted her shot. "North," she said finally. "We go north. We can't fight a whole valley." The SEALs fell silent. Then Kane nodded once. "North it is." It wasn't the easy choice. But it was the right one. That the cave stank of dust, sweat, and cordite. Outside, the night wind moaned through the cliffs, carrying with it the faint chatter of Taliban search parties. Private First Class Elena Torres sat with her back against the rock, Barrett rifle across her lap. Her arms ached, her throat was dry, but her eyes never stopped scanning the mouth of the cave. The SEALs were silent, each man conserving strength, but the tension was thick as barbed wire. Chief Kane hunched over the map again, his red light casting shadows across the rugged terrain. "North route puts us here," he said, tracing with a gloved finger. "Steep climb, narrow ridges exposed as hell. But if we move fast, we hit the plateau by dawn. Air exfil has a better shot of finding us there." One of the SEALs, Reed, lean with a scar across his cheek, grunted. "And if we don't move fast? Then Falcon's men catch us in the canyon and butcher us," Kane said flatly. The silence stretched. Every man in the cave knew what that meant. Falcon might be dead, but his fighters were still hunting. They'd scour every ridge and ravine until they had blood. Kane's gaze shifted to Elena. "You sure about this call, Torres?" Her throat was raw, but her voice didn't waver. "East is suicide. North is survival. I'll take survival." He studied her for a long moment, then gave a curt nod. "Then north it is. Pack up. We move in 5. The climb." The night was moonless, the stars sharp and cold overhead. Every step north was uphill, shale crumbling under boots, the air thinning with altitude. Elena's lungs burned. The Barrett dug into her shoulder straps like a lead weight. The SEALs moved like ghosts, wordless, efficient, hands signaling in the dark. Elena forced herself to keep pace. She wasn't SEAL. She wasn't even Ranger. But she refused to be the weak link. Halfway up the ridge, Kane raised a fist. Everyone froze. Elena dropped to a knee, scanning. Her NVGs picked out shapes moving below, 4, maybe 5 fighters sweeping the valley floor with flashlights. Her heart hammered. One careless rock slide and the whole team would be exposed. Kane motioned for silence. They waited. Breath shallow. Muscles cramping. Finally, the patrol faded into the distance, their shouts lost on the wind. Only then did Kane move again. The plateau. By dawn, they reached the plateau, a flat stretch of stone with jagged cliffs on 3 sides. From here, Elena could see for miles. The valley choked with dust, tiny figures moving like ants far below. Kane dropped his pack, keyed his radio. Viper 2-1, this is Hunter Team. Plateau secured. Requesting exfil coordinates. Static. Then a faint voice broke through. Copy. Birds grounded at Kandahar. Al-Zihad. You're on your own until dark. Reed swore under his breath. We're sitting ducks up here. Kane ignored him. We hold this ground. Torres set up overwatch. Anything moves within 1,000 meters, I want to know before it knows us. Elena unfolded the Barrett, belly flat against the rock. Through her scope she watched the valley below. Fighters were moving in squads now, spreading, sweeping. They knew someone had killed Falcon. And they wanted blood. Contact. The first firefight came mid-morning. A squad of Taliban fighters crept up the ridge from the west, rifles glinting in the sun. Elena spotted them first. Movement. 9 o'clock. 8 tangos. Kane didn't hesitate. Take the lead. Elena exhaled. Crosshairs found the point man. She squeezed. The Barrett cracked, echoing like thunder. The fighter's chest exploded, hurling him backward. The SEALs opened fire in controlled bursts. The ridge erupted into chaos. Bullets smacked into rock, spraying shards. Elena fired again, cycling the heavy rifle, each shot tearing holes in the assault. The enemy broke after 3 minutes, dragging their wounded, leaving bodies strewn on the slope. Silence returned, broken only by Elena's ragged breathing. Her shoulder throbbed from the Barrett's recoil. Reed clapped her on the back. Hell of a shot, Torres. She didn't smile. She just checked her magazine. Plenty more where that came from. The push. By noon, the sun was brutal. The team rotated shifts, some resting, others watching. Elena refused to rest. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw Falcon's head snap back, saw the bodies rolling down the slope. Kane noticed. You'll burn out if you don't pace yourself. I'm fine. His stare was sharp. That's what every rookie says before they collapse. Hydrate. 5 minutes of shut-eye. That's an order. She wanted to argue, but her body betrayed her. Her hands shook as she tore open an MRE. She forced down dry crackers, washed them with warm canteen water. She lay back against her pack, eyes fluttering shut. Sleep came in snatches. Gunfire in dreams. Voices in Spanish, her abuela's prayers, her father's old ranch radio. She woke to Kane shaking her shoulder. On your feet, Torres. We're moving again. The ambush. The north route wasn't empty. By late afternoon, as they descended into a narrow gorge, gunfire erupted from both sides. Contact left. Contact right. Bullets sparked off stone. The SEALs dove for cover, returning fire in disciplined bursts. Elena scrambled behind a boulder, Barrett too unwieldy for close quarters. She drew her M4, firing controlled pairs. The gorge became a killing box. Taliban fighters rained bullets from the ridges above. The SEALs were pinned. Reed shouted, "We're screwed if we don't break out." Kane barked, "Torres, think you can clear us?" Elena's pulse spiked. The only way was risky as hell: climb the ridge under fire, set up the Barrett, and thin the enemy from above. "I can do it," she said before doubt could stop her. "Go." She slung the Barrett, scrambling up jagged rock. Bullets whipped past. One clipped her sleeve, burning her arm. She gritted her teeth, kept climbing. At the top, she threw herself flat, Barrett snapping open. She sighted the nearest machine gun nest. Fired. The gunner crumpled. Another shot. Another kill. The SEALs seized the moment, surging forward, grenades clearing the gorge. Within minutes, the ambush was broken. Fighters fled into the hills. Elena stayed on the ridge, chest heaving, eyes scanning for stragglers. When the last shot echoed away, Kane climbed up beside her. "You saved our asses," he said. Her throat was tight. She just nodded. The night march. They pushed through the night, muscles screaming, nerves raw. Elena's body felt like it was falling apart, but adrenaline kept her upright. The SEALs didn't treat her like an outsider anymore. Reed cracked jokes to keep spirits up. One of the others, Holt, handed her his last protein bar. Kane walked near her, silent but steady, like a wall against the chaos. At dawn, they reached a dry plateau marked by a crumbling watchtower. Kane called it. "We hold here until exfil. Birds should be inbound by 2200. Elena dropped beside her rifle, every muscle trembling. But she knew it wasn't over. The Taliban weren't done. Not until they had revenge. The final push. Sure enough, just before sunset, the horizon erupted with dust clouds. Dozens of fighters, trucks mounted with DSHK heavy machine guns, moving fast. The SEALs scrambled to positions. Kane's voice was ice. "We hold this ground or we die here. Torres, make every shot count." Elena settled behind the Barrett, scope glinting in the dying sun. She exhaled, pressed her cheek into the stock and whispered to herself, "Not a miracle. Just a soldier doing her job." The first truck rolled into range. She fired. The driver slumped, vehicle skidding sideways. Another shot punched through an engine block, fire blooming. The SEALs poured lead into the advancing wave. Explosions lit the plateau. Elena's world narrowed to the scope, the recoil, the endless cycle of death. One by one the enemy fell. But still they came. Then the radio crackled. "Hunter team, this is Viper 2-1. We see you. LZ hot, 20 mics out. Hold on." Relief surged through the team. But 20 minutes was a lifetime. Kane's voice thundered over the gunfire. "Hold the line." Elena chambered another round. "I'm not letting them take us." The plateau shook with thunder. Heavy machine guns spat fire from the valley floor, tracer rounds stitching the air, ricochets sparking off stone. The setting sun bled across the desert sky, painting everything red as if the world itself were soaked in blood. Private First Class Elena Torres pressed her cheek into the Barrett stock, scope filled with smoke and chaos. Every shot was a choice. Every trigger pull meant a few more seconds of survival. She lined up on the first DSHK gunner and squeezed. The .50 cal slug tore him from the mount, his body flipping backward. Without pausing, she adjusted and fired again, dropping the replacement before he could grab the handles. "Two down," she shouted. The SEALs held the perimeter, rifles cracking in controlled bursts. Reed's voice barked over the din, "We're running dry." Kane moved like a storm, calm but fierce, shifting men to weak spots, shouting orders that cut through the chaos. "Focus fire on the trucks. Keep them from pushing up the slope." Elena chambered another round. The Barrett boomed. A Hilux's engine block exploded, flames consuming the cab. Fighters leapt from the back, screaming, burning, rolling in the dirt. She didn't look away. 15 mics until birds. Kane roared. 15 minutes. A lifetime in this hell. The push. The enemy surged harder. Mortars began dropping, thumping into the plateau, shockwaves lifting dirt and rock into the air. One shell landed close, too close. The blast hurled Elena sideways, ears ringing, dust choking her throat. "Torres." Kane's voice cut through the ringing. She coughed, dragging the Barrett back to her shoulder. Her left arm throbbed, shrapnel had cut through the sleeve, warm blood soaking her uniform. But she ignored it. She still had a right hand. She still had a trigger finger. Through her scope she saw them, fighters sprinting up the slope, RPGs slung on shoulders. She aimed at the lead man, fired. His chest blossomed red. She shifted, fired again. Another down. "RPG's left flank," she shouted. Holt spun, M249 chattering, cutting the remaining attackers to ribbons. "Good eyes, Torres." Kane barked. The crack. A scream split the night. One of the SEALs, Donnelly, fell back, clutching his thigh, blood pouring through his fingers. "Medic." Elena kept firing as Holt crawled to Donnelly, dragging him behind cover, hands working fast with a tourniquet. The Barrett bucked, another fighter fell, but Elena's stomach twisted. She'd seen wounds before, but not like this, not with men who'd been joking with her hours earlier. "Focus." Kane's voice slammed into her, pulling her back. "You think about him later. Right now you keep us alive." She swallowed hard, nodded, and reloaded. The helicopters. The first thump of rotor blades came like salvation. "Birds inbound." Reed shouted. Two UH-60 Black Hawks roared over the ridge, door guns blazing, cutting swaths through the valley. The Taliban scrambled, some firing wildly, others breaking. But the trucks didn't stop. One in particular, armored, reinforced, pushed straight for the plateau. The gunner behind the mounted DSHK poured fire upward, forcing the Black Hawks to bank away. "They'll overrun us," Holt yelled. Kane turned to Elena, eyes burning. "Torres, that truck doesn't make it up this slope. Do you understand me?" Her hands shook. The truck was bouncing across rocks, armored plates welded onto the cab, engine roaring. Even for the Barrett, that was a hard shot. But she didn't argue. She dropped prone, exhaled, aimed low. Come on, come on." The Barrett thundered. Sparks flew from the grill. The truck swerved but kept coming. She adjusted, fired again. This time the round punched through the hood. Smoke billowed. A third shot. The engine exploded. Fire roared out, engulfing the cab. The truck skidded sideways, tumbling back down the slope, smashing into rocks. Fighters leapt clear, bodies breaking against stone. The SEALs cheered, voices raw. But Kane didn't cheer. He scanned the valley, jaw clenched. Not done yet. They'll throw everything at us before those birds can land. The last wave. As if on cue, the horizon swarmed with fresh fighters. Dozens, maybe 100, charging uphill, firing from the hip, screaming war cries that echoed through the canyon. The SEALs opened fire, magazines nearly empty. Holt saw clattered dry. Reed switched to his pistol. Kane fired single shots, calm as death. Elena slammed another magazine into the Barrett, chambered, fired. One fighter fell. Then another. She worked the bolt like a machine, recoil bruising her shoulder, blood slicking her sleeve. But for every one she dropped, 3 more came. "We're outnumbered 10-1. Reed shouted. Kane's voice was iron. "Then we make it cost them 10 for every one of us." The helicopter LZ. The first Black Hawk swung lower, skid scraping rock. Door gunners raked the slope, cutting swaths through the attackers. "Go. Move," Kane ordered. Holt dragged Donnelly, blood soaking his pant leg. Reed covered them, firing bursts from his last mag. Elena kept shooting, holding the line until her rifle clicked dry. She dropped the mag, slammed in her last one. "Torres, that's it," Kane shouted. "Not leaving," she snapped back. "Damn it, soldier, that's an order." She fired again, dropping another fighter at the ridge line. The second Black Hawk hovered closer, its rotor wash blasting dust and smoke across the plateau. Kane grabbed her collar, hauling her bodily. "We're leaving." She cursed, slung the Barrett, ran for the bird. Bullets cracked past, one smashing into the dirt near her boot, spraying rock fragments across her leg. She stumbled but kept going. Hands yanked her into the cabin. Reed jumped in after her. Kane was the last, diving aboard as the Black Hawk lifted, tracers streaking past. "Escape." The Black Hawks roared skyward, tilting hard. Below, the plateau was a mess of fire, bodies, and wrecked vehicles. Taliban fighters scattered like ants, some still firing wildly into the air, their bullets harmless against the night. Elena collapsed against the cabin wall, Barrett across her lap, chest heaving. Her whole body shook, part exhaustion, part adrenaline, part disbelief that she was still alive. Donnelly groaned, Holt still pressing the tourniquet tight. Blood soaked the floor, sticky under boots. Reed grinned through the grime. "Hell of a camping trip, huh?" Elena let out a weak laugh, more air than sound. Kane crouched in front of her, eyes steady. "You held the line, Torres. You saved this team." She shook her head. "We all did." But deep inside she knew, without the Barrett, without those shots, none of them would have made it. Back at Timberwolf. The Black Hawks touched down at FOB Timberwolf well past midnight. Medics rushed Donnelly to the aid station. The SEALs stumbled out, sweat and grime caked on their faces, exhaustion written in every line. Elena slid the Barrett off her shoulder and set it gently on the ground. Her arms trembled, her body screaming for rest. But the stares started immediately. Soldiers clustered, whispers flying. Word of her first miracle shot had already spread. Now there would be stories of the plateau, of how an army private with a Barrett had stood alongside SEALs and held back 100 men. Kane ignored the whispers. He walked beside her, silent, until they reached the tent line. Then he stopped, turned, and fixed her with a stare that cut through the noise. "You know what you did out there wasn't just luck, right?" She swallowed. "Felt like it." "No," he leaned closer, voice low but sharp. "Luck doesn't keep men alive under fire. Training does. Nerve does. You proved you're more than just a miracle shot. You're a soldier." For the first time since the mission began, Elena let herself smile. Just a little. The mystery. Later, lying on her cot, exhaustion finally dragging her under, Elena thought about Kane's words. About the fire, the bodies, the weight of the Barrett on her shoulder. But her mind snagged on one detail. In the chaos in her scope, she'd seen a man standing back from the fight. Not Taliban, not armed. Watching. Dressed in plain clothes, with a radio pressed to his ear. And when the Black Hawks lifted, he hadn't run. He just smiled. She hadn't told Kane. She hadn't told anyone. But the image haunted her. Because whoever that man was, he wasn't finished. The desert was alive with echoes of war. Every ridge, every shadow, every wavering shimmer of heat off the sand seemed to breathe danger. Sergeant First Class Elena Ramirez wiped the thin veil of dust from her cheek, keeping her eye pressed to the scope of her Barrett M82A1. She was perched high on a craggy outcropping overlooking the valley below, the rifle balanced across a bipod, the weight of the massive .50 caliber weapon pressing into her shoulder like an old friend. She hadn't slept much. None of them had. The last mission, cutting down that Taliban convoy and intercepting the high-value target, had set the whole valley on fire. Intel now said 3 separate cells had converged in the region, coordinated under a ruthless commander named Kadir. The man was known for orchestrating ambushes that wiped out entire patrols. And he wanted blood for the convoy they'd lost. Ramirez had lived in the shadow of revenge before. She could feel it building like a sandstorm, inevitable, choking, unstoppable if they weren't ready. Chief Donovan crouched beside her, scanning the valley with binoculars. His face was carved with lines of sleepless nights, but his voice carried that unshakable confidence she'd grown to rely on. Movement on the south ridge. 2 technicals. Looks like a recon element, he muttered. Range? She asked, finger brushing the safety of the Barrett. 1400 out. She adjusted her scope. The heat shimmer made it tricky, but she locked onto the first technical, a beat-up Toyota Hilux with a DSHK mounted in the bed. 2 men leaned over the heavy machine gun, scanning the terrain below. They're hunting us, she whispered. Chief didn't deny it. Instead, he lowered the binos and glanced at her. You know the call. Her chest tightened. Pull the trigger and the enemy would know exactly where they were. But let those technicals slip away, and they'd walk right into her platoon's staging ground below. She inhaled, steadying her body. The rifle was a beast, but when she exhaled, everything melted into silence. Just her, the target, and the glass. The round left the barrel with that signature thunderous boom. She saw the driver's chest burst before he slumped sideways. A half-second later, the windshield caved, glass spraying into the desert wind. The truck swerved violently. She realigned. Second shot, DSHK gunner's head snapped back like a rag doll. The Hilux rolled to a stop, engine smoking. The second technical jolted to a halt, men scrambling out, dragging the wounded. They shouted, pointing wildly up the ridge. Ramirez was already adjusting, chambering another round. She squeezed. The man yelling commands dropped mid-sentence, dust exploding beneath him. 2 down. 5 scatter, she muttered, more to herself than Chief. Chief's hand tapped her shoulder. That's enough. They'll call in reinforcements. We move. They packed fast. Barrett broken down, stowed across her back, her body screaming from the weight but her training numbing the pain. Down the ridge they went, fast but deliberate, every sound magnified in the silence between bursts of distant gunfire. The platoon regrouped near the old mud brick compound that served as their forward staging point. Lieutenant Harris paced like a man waiting for bad news he already knew was coming. His helmet strap dangled loose under his chin, his M4 clutched tight. Talk to me, he demanded when Ramirez and Chief entered. 2 technicals neutralized. Survivors scattered, Chief reported. But they'll be back and angrier than hell. Harris cursed under his breath, then slammed a fist against the wall. We're bleeding time. Hire wants this valley cleared before Kadir consolidates. That means tonight. Tonight? Ramirez asked. We've been in contact all day. Our guys need rest. You push us out now, we'll be walking into an ambush blind. Harris turned to her, jaw tight. Orders came down from battalion. The longer we sit, the stronger he gets. We hit his compound before dawn, or we'll be the ones ambushed. Silence settled like lead. Every man and woman in the room knew what that meant. No sleep, no margin for error. Just steel, adrenaline, and hope. Chief finally broke it. Then we prep. Ammo, water, batteries. Move light, hit hard. As darkness bled across the valley, they moved. The desert night was cold, the stars sharp as shattered glass above them. Ramirez felt the weight of every step. Her Barrett was heavy, but heavier still was the silence. The way every soldier checked their corners, adjusted their gear, glanced at her as though she were the unspoken edge of their survival. They moved in staggered file, weaving between low dunes and jagged rocks. The moon threw long shadows across the sand. Somewhere ahead the compound loomed. An hour into the march they hit their first contact. Tripwire, a private hissed, freezing in place. Ramirez dropped to a knee, heart hammering. A thin wire stretched across the path, nearly invisible in the moonlight. An old Soviet-era mine was buried at its end. One step more and they'd all be scattered across the desert in pieces. Chief knelt, carefully cutting the wire, sweat dripping despite the cold. He glanced back. He's watching us. Kadir knows we're coming. They pressed on, nerves wound tight. The firefight started sudden and brutal. From the ridge above, muzzle flashes erupted, tearing through the night. Tracers streaked red across the darkness. Ramirez hit the dirt, Barrett sliding off her shoulder. She rolled, set the bipod and found her glass. Contact ridge line, someone shouted. The enemy was dug in, pouring fire down on them. Harris yelled for suppression. M240s opening up, rattling against the rock face. Ramirez scanned, found the silhouette of a PKM gunner spitting fire from behind a rock. She exhaled, squeezed. The man disappeared in a spray of dust and blood. She shifted, found another muzzle flash. Another squeeze. Another enemy dropped. But there were too many. They were dug in tight, waiting. Chief scrambled beside her, rounds snapping overhead. We can't stay pinned. Push left. The squad began bounding, two covering, two moving, leapfrogging under fire. Ramirez fired between their movements, every shot giving her people a second more of life. Then the RPG streaked out of the ridge. It slammed into the sand not 20 feet from their line. The blast lifted Ramirez off the ground, her ears ringing, sand burning against her skin. She rolled, gasping, vision swimming. Ramirez. Chief's voice cut through the ringing. He dragged her by the vest, pulling her behind a dune as bullets chewed the dirt around them. Her chest heaved, but she grabbed the Barrett, forcing herself upright. I'm good, she lied, blood dripping from her temple. She sighted in, heart pounding. One shot, two shots, three. The Barrett roared, each thunderclap echoing across the valley. Enemy fire slowed, then faltered. Push. Chief shouted. The platoon surged forward, climbing the ridge under covering fire. Grenades went up, explosions thundering. Screams echoed. And then silence. The ridge was theirs. Bodies lay sprawled across the rocks, rifles still clutched in lifeless hands. The smell of blood and gunpowder hung heavy. They pressed on, deeper into Kadir's territory. Every step carried the weight of exhaustion, but adrenaline drove them. The compound was close, they could feel it. As they regrouped, Harris crouched beside Ramirez. His face was pale in the moonlight. That shot earlier. 1,400 meters? 1,460, she corrected automatically. A rare grin cracked his face, brief but genuine. Damn. Remind me never to piss you off. She smirked faintly, though inside her stomach twisted. 1,460 was nothing compared to the record she still carried. The shot no one spoke about, the one that had left her with nightmares. They moved again, silence settling over them like a shroud. The compound walls rose ahead, dark against the horizon. But as they drew close, Ramirez's gut tightened. Something was wrong. Too quiet. Too easy. Then she saw it. On the wall, just a flicker, a glint of moonlight off glass. A scope. Ambush, she shouted. The valley exploded. Machine guns erupted from the compound walls, tracers slicing the night. Mortars whistled, slamming into the sand, throwing men and women into the air. Screams filled the darkness. Harris was shouting orders, but they were drowned in the storm of fire. Ramirez dropped, slammed the Barrett onto its bipod and scanned the walls. She found a sniper high on a perch, already sighted in on Harris. She pulled the trigger. The enemy's head snapped back, rifle clattering down the wall. But there were more. Too many. Fall back. Chief roared, dragging a wounded private by the vest. We can't take it head on. The platoon scattered, diving behind dunes and rocks, returning fire as best they could. The compound was a fortress and they were in the open. Ramirez fired until her shoulder ached, each shot dropping another enemy. But for every one she killed, two more seemed to appear. The night was chaos, gunfire, explosions, the cries of the wounded. And through it all, she felt the weight of the glass pressing into her eye, her finger never leaving the trigger. But even she knew the truth. They were outgunned, outnumbered, and Kadir was waiting for this exact moment. The war had only just begun. The night roared with chaos. Bullets cracked across the valley, tracers burning through the black sky like fiery veins. Mortar blasts shook the ground, sending showers of sand raining down. Sergeant First Class Elena Ramirez had been through firefights before, but nothing like this. The compound ahead spat death from every corner, and her platoon was caught in the open. Outnumbered, outgunned. She dropped flat, Barrett digging into her shoulder as she lined up a target. The massive rifle barked, the recoil slamming into her chest, the scope's view blurring for a fraction of a second. When it cleared, she saw an enemy heavy gunner collapse, his PKM clattering from the wall. Keep firing. Suppress those bastards. Lieutenant Harris bellowed, voice ragged from strain. He crouched behind a broken boulder, his M4 spitting controlled bursts. Suppressing ain't gonna cut it, LT. Chief Donovan shouted back, dragging a bleeding private into cover. We're in a kill box. He's been waiting for us here. Kadir. The name hung in everyone's head like a curse. Ramirez could almost feel his eyes watching them from inside that fortress. The trap sprung just as he wanted. A round smacked the rock inches from her face, spraying stone chips. Ramirez rolled, cursing, then reacquired her scope view. She picked another figure on the wall, one of the mortar spotters calling adjustments. A quick squeeze and his body folded over the parapet. But still the fire came. Endless, relentless. Ramirez. Chief barked, sliding in beside her. His face was streaked with sweat and dust, eyes blazing. We need a breach or we die out here. Can you cover a push to the south wall? She swallowed hard. A push? Against this? Her hands tightened on the Barrett. How many we sending? 2 fire teams, enough demo to punch a hole. But they won't make it unless you drop anything that moves. Her stomach twisted. Cover them. With all of them depending on her. Roger that, she muttered, setting her cheek to the stock. Chief clapped her shoulder once. Hard fast. Then he was gone, shouting orders into the chaos. The assault team formed quickly, 6 soldiers clutching C4 packs crouched behind a dune. Ramirez shifted her position, the world narrowing into scope and trigger. Go! Chief roared. The team broke from cover, sprinting low and fast across the sand. Instantly the compound erupted with fire. Machine guns cut the air, tracers slashing like hell's handwriting. Ramirez fired. 1 shot, enemy head gone. Another, gunner slumped sideways, his weapon falling silent. She worked the Barrett like a machine, each thunderous boom a promise to her squad mates. I've got you. A soldier stumbled, hit in the leg. Ramirez swung fast, nailed the shooter, watched her teammate crawl back to his feet, limping but alive. Keep moving. Chief bellowed. The team reached the wall, slamming against it as bullets screamed overhead. Ramirez exhaled hard, hands trembling from the rapid succession of shots. Her shoulder ached. Her ears rang. But the breach team was alive. A muffled thump shook the wall. Then another. Explosives planted. Seconds later, the night split open with a blast. The south wall erupted in dust and smoke, chunks of brick raining down. Breach made, someone screamed. Move, move, move. Harris ordered, and the platoon surged toward the opening. Inside the breach, the fighting turned feral. The compound was a warren of alleys and courtyards, shadows and death in every corner. Ramirez slung the Barrett across her back, it was too unwieldy for close quarters, and drew her M4, heart hammering as she followed Chief through the smoke. Gunfire echoed off the walls, deafening in the confined spaces. Muzzle flashes lit the darkness, strobing images of soldiers darting between cover, enemies bursting from doorways. The air reeked of cordite and blood. A fighter lunged from a corner, AK raised. Ramirez snapped a burst into his chest, watched him crumple. Another appeared, shrieking in Pashto, spraying rounds wildly. She ducked, felt bullets snap past her ear, then rose and put 2 rounds in his throat. Chief kicked a door open, shotgun booming as he cleared the room. Left side secure, he barked. But the enemy wasn't breaking. If anything, they were more determined inside their stronghold, fighting with the desperation of cornered wolves. The platoon pushed deeper, inch by bloody inch. Ramirez. Harris shouted, ducking into cover beside her. His helmet was cracked, dust smeared across his face. Intel says Kadir's here. We take him out, this whole network collapses. You understand? Her stomach dropped. So that was the mission. Not just clearing a compound. They were here for the man himself. Yes, sir, she said, though the weight of it pressed heavy on her chest. They advanced again, stacking up along a narrow hallway lit only by flickering oil lamps. Chief held up a fist. Stop. He pointed forward. Voices ahead. At least 3. Chief mouthed the count, then signaled breach. They hit the door like thunder. Ramirez stormed in behind Chief, muzzle up, adrenaline on fire. 3 fighters turned, eyes wide, rifles halfway up. Too slow. M4 chatter filled the room, bodies falling hard to the floor. But one of them wasn't like the others. Taller. Older. His eyes burned with intelligence and fury. He slipped out a back exit even as his men fell. Kadir. Chief roared. The chase was on. They tore through the compound's twisting corridors, footsteps pounding, shouts echoing. Gunfire crackled as pockets of resistance tried to slow them. Ramirez barely felt the burning in her lungs as they pushed harder, closer, chasing the phantom of their enemy. At last they burst into the main courtyard. Moonlight spilled over high walls, and there he was, Kadir, dashing toward a waiting SUV, bodyguards forming a shield around him. Take him. Harris screamed. Bullets flew like lightning. Ramirez dropped to a knee, Barrett swinging into her hands in one fluid motion. She slammed the bipod onto a crate, glass to her eye. The world slowed. Target, Kadir. Distance, less than 200 meters. Easy shot, if not for the chaos. His guards crowded him, dragging him toward the vehicle, firing wildly in all directions. She tracked him, finger hovering. A sudden bodyguard stepped into her line, raising his weapon. She fired, chest exploding red. But in that heartbeat, Kadir slipped into the SUV. The engine roared. No, no, no. Ramirez muttered, frantically shifting. She fired again, shattered the windshield. The driver slumped forward, but momentum carried the vehicle crashing through a half-broken gate. Sparks flew, wheels squealing, then it vanished into the desert night. Son of a bitch. Chief shouted, slamming his fist against the wall. The compound was theirs, but Kadir had slipped away. The aftermath was bitter. They cleared the last of the fighters, secured weapons caches, patched the wounded. The compound was scarred with bullet holes and blood. Fires smoldered in corners, casting eerie shadows against the ancient walls. Ramirez sat against a crate, Barrett across her lap, her hands trembling. The adrenaline drained, leaving only exhaustion and the bitter taste of failure. Chief crouched beside her, handing over a canteen. His voice was low, almost gentle. You kept us alive out there. Don't let Kadir slipping away eat you alive. She sipped, staring into the dirt. One more second. One cleaner shot. I could have ended this. He shook his head. Don't carry that weight. It wasn't your call. He's a ghost, we'll get another chance. But deep inside she wasn't sure. Kadir had seen her. Felt her breathing down his neck. And men like him didn't forget. Hours later, as dawn bled across the desert, they exfilled. Dust rose around the convoy of Humvees as they rolled back toward their FOB. Everyone was silent, the weight of what they'd survived heavy in the air. Ramirez leaned against the doorframe, eyes half closed. Her muscles ached, her mind replaying the chase again and again. The mischance. The man who got away. Harris rode up front, radio pressed to his ear, voice clipped as he reported the operation. Chief sat across from her, cleaning his shotgun with the calm of a man who'd seen too many battles to waste energy on what-ifs. Then the radio crackled. A new intel feed. Kadir's SUV hadn't just disappeared into the desert. Drone footage had him regrouping with another cell, moving fast toward the mountains. The fight wasn't over. It had just shifted. Chief looked up, meeting Ramirez's eyes. Looks like we're not done yet, Sergeant. Her fingers tightened around the Barrett. She nodded slowly. The war was still burning. And she was right in the furnace. The mountains rose like jagged teeth against the horizon, their peaks etched in pale light as the sun clawed its way into the sky. The convoy bounced along the rough dirt track, Humvee tires kicking dust into the cold morning air. Sergeant First Class Elena Ramirez sat rigid in the back seat, Barrett balanced across her knees, every muscle in her body aching from the night's battle. The compound was behind them, still smoldering. Kadir was ahead, somewhere in those mountains. And he wasn't running anymore, he was regrouping. Chief Donovan broke the silence first. Intel says he's got 30, maybe 40 fighters with him. If he reaches the caves up there, we'll lose him for good. Then we don't let him reach them, Lieutenant Harris muttered from the passenger seat, eyes locked on the road. His voice carried more determination than confidence. Ramirez stared out at the peaks, jaw tight. Every mile they drove, the guilt of the missed shot gnawed deeper. She could still see him, the silhouette slipping into the SUV, the windshield cracking under her round, the moment she was too late. It replayed in her head like a curse. Chief noticed her silence. He leaned closer, voice low so only she could hear. "You're chewing glass, Sergeant. Spit it out." Kadir's not untouchable. Her fingers tightened around the Barrett. "I had him, Chief. I had him right there and I—" He cut her off. "Stop. You didn't miss. You just didn't get the chance. Difference matters. You'll get your shot." But she wasn't so sure. The convoy halted at the base of the range, the vehicles forming a rough perimeter. The mountains loomed overhead, cliffs striped with shadow. A drone feed piped through Harris's tablet showed the SUV abandoned near a rocky pass, tire tracks leading up into the narrow valleys. "He's on foot now," Harris said grimly. "We go after him." The platoon dismounted, checking weapons, slamming fresh mags into rifles. Packs were tightened, radios tested. The air up here was thin, cold, biting at exposed skin. Every sound echoed against the stone walls. "Ramirez, you're on overwatch," Harris ordered. "Find a perch. Call shots. Keep us alive." She nodded, slinging the Barrett and starting up a side ridge with 2 spotters. The climb burned her legs, her lungs straining in the thin air. Sweat froze against her skin. But she reached a ledge overlooking the valley, dropped prone and laid the rifle across the bipod. From here she could see the platoon threading its way through the rocky pass below, figures moving in staggered formation, every shadow a potential ambush. She scanned ahead. Nothing. Just rocks, ridges and silence. Too much silence. The first shot came from above. A crack echoed off the cliffs and one of the soldiers below pitched backward, blood spraying from his chest. Chaos erupted. "Sniper!" someone screamed. Ramirez's heart kicked into overdrive. She scanned the ridge opposite, glass sweeping fast. There, a flicker of movement, a scope glint just for a heartbeat. She zeroed in, exhaled, fired. The Barrett thundered, dust exploding where the enemy lay. A body tumbled down the rocks. But the mountains came alive. Gunfire erupted from both sides of the pass, fighters spilling from caves and crevices, shouting in Pashto. Bullets clanged off stone, dust clouds rising as rounds chewed the ground around the platoon. "Ambush! Take cover!" Harris roared, returning fire. Ramirez worked the Barrett furiously, dropping one target after another. Her spotters called directions, their voices frantic. "Left ridge, 2 o'clock. Firing from the cave mouth." She swung, fired, the recoil bruising her shoulder. Another fighter dropped. But they kept coming. For every one she killed, 3 more seemed to take his place. Below, Chief was rallying the squad, moving them from boulder to boulder, grenades arcing into enemy cover. The air was thick with smoke, shouts, and gunfire. Ramirez's throat went dry. This wasn't just an ambush. This was Kadir's terrain. He was drawing them deeper, bleeding them in the rocks. "Ramirez." Chief's voice crackled over comms, rough with static. "We're pinned. We need a way out. Find us one." Her eye pressed to the scope, scanning hard. She spotted a narrow ravine cutting up the left side of the pass, partially hidden by boulders. "Southwest ridge, 20 meters ahead, ravine leads up and out," she called. Chief didn't hesitate. You heard her. Smoke and move. Canisters hissed, thick plumes billowing across the pass. Under cover of smoke, the platoon sprinted, dragging wounded, firing blind suppressive bursts. Ramirez fired again and again, each shot aimed at muzzle flashes threatening her people. By some miracle they made the ravine. The fighters' fire shifted, ricocheting off rocks as they chased the platoon's retreat. Ramirez and her spotters scrambled down from their perch, joining the others as they pushed hard uphill, lungs burning, boots slipping on loose stone. The firefight raged behind them, but they didn't stop. Not until they crested the ridge and stumbled into a narrow plateau, panting, bleeding, but alive. They regrouped in the plateau's shelter, backs to the rock wall. Harris knelt over a map, voice hoarse. "We're cut off. Kadir knows this range better than we do. If we chase blind, we die." "Then we stop chasing blind," Chief growled. He jabbed a finger at the map. "He'll head for the caves at Costa Gorge. It's the only stronghold big enough to hold his force. If we cut him off there, we finish this." Harris hesitated, torn between caution and orders. Then he looked at Ramirez. "You've got the eyes. Can we make that route without walking into another kill box?" Her heart thudded. The responsibility was crushing, but she nodded. "We can. If we move fast, keep to the ridge lines. But it's a gamble." "Everything's a gamble," Chief muttered. Decision made. They set off again, climbing narrow goat trails along the cliffs, weapons always ready, nerves wired tight. The mountains were unforgiving, sheer drops on one side, jagged rock on the other. Every loose stone felt like it might give them away. Hours passed in brutal silence, broken only by the scrape of boots and the occasional distant crack of gunfire echoing from another valley. Ramirez moved with the point element, Barrett at the ready, scanning every ridge. Her eyes burned from the strain, her body running on fumes. But the thought of Kadir slipping away again kept her sharp. Then, movement. Far below, a column of fighters snaked along the valley floor, 30 men at least, rifles slung, moving toward the gorge. Ramirez froze, raised her scope. And there, among them, was Kadir. The same tall figure wrapped in a black keffiyeh, stride confident despite the carnage behind him. Her pulse spiked. This was it. The chance she'd missed. She settled the crosshairs on his chest. Distance, nearly 2,000 meters. Wind, steady cross breeze. She adjusted, finger curling on the trigger. Ramirez, hold, Chief's voice whispered behind her. Her jaw clenched. He's right there. I can end this. Too far. Too many variables. You take the shot and miss, we lose the element of surprise. We shadow him to the gorge. Then we finish him. Her finger trembled on the trigger. Every fiber of her wanted to squeeze. But she forced herself to ease off, lowering the rifle. Kadir vanished into the valley shadows, unaware of the eyes that followed him. Night fell again by the time they reached the outskirts of Costa Gorge. The place loomed ahead like the throat of a beast, jagged cliffs forming a natural fortress. Fires flickered inside the caves, Kadir's men settling in, confident no army could touch them here. The platoon huddled in a rocky overhang, whispering plans. Harris pointed at the gorge entrance. We hit them at dawn. Shock assault. No way around it. Chief shook his head. We try to storm that gorge, we'll get chewed alive. We need precision. We need Ramirez. All eyes turned to her. She felt the weight of their stares, the unspoken expectation. She was the hammer they'd bring down on Kadir's skull. Her throat was dry, but she nodded. Give me the shot. That night, while the platoon rested in shifts, Ramirez lay prone on a high ridge overlooking the gorge. The Barrett was set, scope aligned, breath steady despite the cold biting through her gear. She watched the fires flicker, the shadows move. She watched Kadir himself step into the firelight, speaking with his lieutenants. She could hear Chief's words echo in her head. You'll get your shot. And now, finally, it was here. Her finger brushed the trigger. She exhaled. The world narrowed to glass and crosshairs. And then, movement. Through her scope, she saw Kadir pause mid-sentence. Slowly, his head lifted, eyes scanning the ridges. Almost like he could feel her sight on him. Her breath caught. Had he seen her? Her finger froze. And in that frozen second, Kadir turned and stepped back into the cave, swallowed by darkness. Ramirez lowered the rifle, heart hammering in her chest. The war wasn't done. Dawn would bring fire, blood, and the final hunt. But tonight, the mountains held their breath. The village was burning. Flames licked the night sky, throwing an orange glow against the desert horizon. The air reeked of smoke, fuel, and the bitter tang of explosives. The radio was alive with overlapping voices, calls for medevac, reports of hostiles still in the area, and strained updates about dwindling ammunition. Sergeant Mason sprinted down a crumbling alley, Barrett slung over her back, M4 in her hands. Sweat streaked her dirt-caked face as adrenaline drowned out exhaustion. Behind her, Petty Officer Reyes, the SEAL chief, limped forward, blood soaking through the wrap on his thigh. Left flank. They're circling. Reyes barked, gritting his teeth. Mason pivoted sharply, firing 3 bursts into the shadows. Figures collapsed, their rifles clattering against the rubble. Her pulse hammered. There was no time to think, only to act. They had been out here for almost 36 hours, cut off, ambushed, and surrounded after a mission meant to cripple an insurgent supply chain had turned into a full-scale trap. The 3,247-meter shot had marked her name in whispers across the platoon, but tonight she wasn't a legend, just a soldier fighting to keep her people alive. A trap that kept closing. The team had regrouped in what used to be a school. Bullet holes chewed through blackboards and broken desks, the smell of charred wood clinging to every corner. Lieutenant Parker, pale from blood loss, was propped against a wall, stubbornly refusing morphine. We hold until exfil. No other choice, he rasped. But exfil ain't coming, sir, Reyes muttered. Air corridors locked down. Command says we're ghosts till sunrise. The silence that followed was heavier than the distant gunfire. Everyone knew what that meant. They were bait, whether command admitted it or not. If they survived until dawn, reinforcements might push through. If not. Mason checked her Barrett, running her hand over the cool steel. She remembered every shot she'd taken with it, every life ended, every comrade saved. Tonight it might decide their fate again. Roof? 2 minutes, she said, her tone clipped but steady. If they push armor through that north road, we're done. Reyes gave her a look that was part respect, part warning. Don't miss, soldier. She smirked faintly despite the chaos. You doubting me, Chief? Just reminding you we're not keeping score anymore. We're keeping lives. The advance. Minutes later, Mason lay prone on the roof, the Barrett's bipod dug into broken concrete. Her scope swept across the night. The world narrowed to lines of heat and shadow. Movement. A convoy. Technicals with mounted guns creeping forward like predators. Behind them, an armored vehicle, likely the insurgents' ace, meant to level the school and everything in it. Her finger settled on the trigger. Breath slowed. Exhale. Squeeze. The Barrett thundered. The lead technical erupted in sparks, the driver slumping dead before the truck swerved into a wall. Gunfire exploded from the convoy in retaliation, tracers streaking toward the rooftop. Mason rolled, shifted, and fired again. The second shot punched through the gunner's chest, knocking him clean off the mounted weapon. Rey's voice crackled in her earpiece. Keep them busy. We're setting charges downstairs. Bullets chewed at the rooftop. Mason ducked, feeling concrete spray against her cheek. She crawled to a new position, lined up again, and spotted the armored vehicle inching closer. This was the shot that mattered. Wind gusted. Heat shimmered. Distance compressed into a razor's edge of precision. She steadied, whispered to herself, "Come on, just one more miracle." She fired. The Barrett kicked, echoing like thunder across the burning village. The round struck just above the driver's viewport. Sparks. Then flame. The armored vehicle lurched, then burst into an inferno, its ammunition cooking off in a chain reaction. The explosion rocked the night, sending shockwaves through the streets. Cheers erupted below from her battered squad. The pushback. But victory was short-lived. The insurgents, furious, surged forward. They poured down alleys, screaming war cries, hurling RPGs and spraying bullets with reckless abandon. Mason barely had time to chamber another round before the rooftop shook from an explosion. She scrambled back, coughing through smoke. Reyes burst through the stairwell door, dragging another soldier by the collar. They're breaching. Fall back. They fought room by room, every hallway a gauntlet, every corner a kill zone. Mason's arms burned from recoil, her ears rang from constant blasts, but her focus never faltered. In a collapsed classroom they regrouped. Only 7 of them left, battered, bleeding, but unbroken. Parker finally slumped, unconscious from blood loss. Reyes knelt beside him, jaw tight. We're losing too many. This ain't holding. Mason looked around at her team, faces smeared with blood and soot, eyes hollow yet defiant. She made a decision. We take the fight to them, she said. One push. Hit them where it hurts. Buy enough chaos for sunrise. Suicide, Reyes muttered. Maybe. But better than waiting to be buried alive. Silence. Then one by one the squad nodded. Into the fire. They slipped into the streets under cover of smoke and ruin, moving like shadows. Mason led with the Barrett, Reyes covering her flank. The rest carried what ammo and explosives they had left. The insurgents were celebrating their push when the Americans struck. Grenades tore through gatherings of fighters, rifles barked in unison, and the village square erupted in chaos. Mason dropped 3 targets in quick succession, each shot echoing like a hammer against the night. She didn't think anymore, just reacted, each kill mechanical, precise. Reyes charged forward, laying down suppressive fire, rallying what was left of the squad. Then came the counter. RPGs slammed into walls, collapsing stone and dust around them. Mason was thrown to the ground, ears ringing, vision swimming. She pushed herself up, Barrett still in her grip. Through the haze she saw him. The enemy commander, black headscarf, chest rig bristling with ammo, barking orders from a balcony. He was the one keeping the fighters rallied, the one turning chaos into a noose. Her instinct screamed. This was the shot that mattered more than any other. She braced, scope locking on his chest. He noticed her. Raised his arm. A pistol glinted. For a second, time froze. Mason fired. The round tore through him, flinging him back. His body crumpled, lifeless. The insurgents' formation cracked. Confusion spread like wildfire. Push. Push now. Reyes roared. The Americans surged forward, driving the enemy into retreat. The last stand. But victory was costly. They were down to 4 by the time they barricaded themselves in the village square, bodies and smoke strewn around them. Dawn crept on the horizon. A faint hum broke through the silence, the sound of rotor blades. Reinforcements. Mason slumped against a wall, blood seeping from a shrapnel wound in her side. She held the Barrett across her lap, chest heaving, eyes fixed on the sky. Reyes sat beside her, reloading with trembling hands. "You did it, soldier." "Held the line." She gave a weary smile. "We did it." The choppers descended, their floodlights cutting through smoke and ash. But as the team prepared to be lifted out, Mason noticed something. A figure. On a rooftop across the square. A sniper rifle aimed right at them. Her body moved before her mind did. She raised the Barrett, ignoring the pain, ignoring Reyes' shout. She steadied, squeezed. Both rifles cracked at once. The figure fell. Mason staggered, clutching her side, the impact of the enemy's shot grazing her vest. She collapsed, gasping for breath. Reyes caught her, dragging her toward the waiting bird. "Stay with me. Don't you quit now." Her vision blurred. The last thing she saw was the rising sun burning across the horizon, painting the battlefield gold. Epilogue, the shot that echoed. Weeks later, the story of the 3,247-meter shot spread through the ranks. But for those who had been there, another tale mattered more. The night Sergeant Mason led a broken squad through hell and carved survival out of certain death. She recovered, scarred but unbowed. And though command decorated her, though her name became a legend whispered among soldiers and SEALs alike, Mason herself never boasted. Because she knew the war never ended with one shot. There would always be another. And somewhere in the silence between battles, she carried the question that haunted every survivor. Was it luck or was it something else keeping her alive? The mystery lingered, as war always leaves behind. The end.